Okay, so me, Johannes Agenbach of South Africa, of the Boer people of South Africa, declare to all our countrymen, racial kin around the world, and our enemies abroad and domestically, that South Africa belongs to the white man, is ordained by God Almighty, creator of heaven and earth, and we will safeguard it with our lives. We will fight and we will die for our right to once again have our own country in which we will live free and prosperously.
My guest is Johannes Agenbach. I hope I say that right. He's an Afrikaner, he's a farmer, he's a political activist. I think some people will label him as a right-wing Afrikaner nationalist. I'm not quite sure what that means, be it as it may. He's a key figure in the Vryburger Beweging. That's the free citizen movement, an organization that advocates for Afrikaner self-determination. And I've just met him literally 5 minutes ago for the first time. I became aware of Johannes after I saw a really well-produced professional video that he produced to bring his cause to the attention of people. And I was really captivated by this video. And I thought it might be interesting to talk to him. So Johannes, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Johan. I do appreciate it.
As I just said, I saw your work for the first time. I saw a little video clip, I would imagine one would call it, that you made to illustrate, to show the destruction of some of what I would broadly call Afrikaner culture monuments in South Africa. So I thought it might be a good idea for us, with your permission, to start this program by showing a short clip from this production that you've made, with your permission.
Just look at this, Dirk. Even the barriers have been stolen or vandalized. Welcome to Amersfoort, where we feel very unwelcome in our own land, in our own country. I'm joined here with my good friend Dirk. We are here to pay respects to our fallen forefathers and their great sacrifice that paved the way for our nationhood. This was erected as a memorial to the Great War of 1899 to 1902, which is known as the Anglo-Boer War, the Second Anglo-Boer War. It was erected 11 years after the devastating war, in a time where my people were impoverished and defeated in many senses. But monuments like this, where it says, deur de publiek bijgedragen van een dankbaar nageslacht, it says, contributed by the public from grateful descendants. And that is what we are still to this day, even though we live in an occupied South Africa where our enemy has taken all the seats of government and seats of power in our country. We remain grateful and we remain resilient and hopeful that our country will be restored to its rightful owners.
Tell us a little bit about the video itself.
So we were driving through South Africa, looking at all random towns, not some of the sites that we visited were premeditated, and we had decided to go and look at, for instance, the Hartbeespoort Dam, because it was a dam that was specifically built by white labor, because we so often hear that black labor was exploited, but never ever is the white people that had that were exploited, never ever, or that built and with their blood and with their sweat this country, never ever is their story told. It's always just this one-dimensional telling of the story of South Africa. So with Amersfoort in particular, we drove through the town because we drove about a total of 6,000 kilometers all throughout South Africa. The first little video we made was in a town called Britstown. That one will still be released, but when we passed this little commemorative monument of the Anglo-Boer War, it was just striking how this pattern keeps repeating itself,
Yeah.
of Afrikaner monuments being vandalized and disrespected, so that's why we filmed it, to show that, it is not that our people physically alone are being disrespected, but also spiritually, we are being, our identity is being aggressively, vandalized.
Yeah, I recently watched and spoke to a black chap from Soweto who's doing a series around the decay of Johannesburg. And because I lived in Johannesburg as a young student, I have can recall great memories of a beautiful city that is so totally destroyed. But what I see here is Amersfoort. Is what I see in Johannesburg, is that also happening in the smaller towns in South Africa, the decay, the destruction of the cities and towns? Can you see it in the small towns as well?
Yes, absolutely. And I think that, this the physical decline of the town, as it obviously, right, we've got Jared Taylor has got this great quote where he says, diversity plus proximity equals conflict, right? So obviously in South Africa, you've got a lot of different ethnic groups which are not friendly towards one another, living together, and that does bring about the conflict that we can see now. But the decline obviously comes from this external source. But I feel like there's a spiritual decline amongst the Afrikaner people as well, and that we have lost our sense of pride and our sense of identity and belonging, and that affects how we carry ourselves in the world. With the anti-apartheid movement that for long dominated the narrative and rhetorical scene in the world, Afrikaners were made to feel lesser and to feel ashamed. But there's this great struggle. So I want to quote you something, or read you a quote from this book, because it very, very perfectly encapsulates this phenomenon. And it's a book by, if you can see, Glo in die volk, glo in jouself, glo in die God, by D.F. Malan, great man. And on page 234 it says, dis lank reeds gesê. Sorry, I have to preface that by saying I'm going to read this in Afrikaans, and perhaps you can translate it for the English audience.
We'll put some translation on the screen.
Okay, awesome. Dit is lank reeds gesê dat die geskiedenis van Suid-Afrika 'n tragedie is, en dat dit vergeet moet word om ons in staat te stel om ons aandag te skenk aan die huidige dringende probleme. Remember, he said this to the youth 100 years ago, more than 100 years ago, to say, this is something that I want to lay, this message I want to lay in your hands. Ons geskiedenis is nie 'n tragedie nie. Dit is niks anders as die hoogste kunswerk van die eeue nie. Ons het 'n reg op ons nasieskap, omdat dit aan ons gegee is deur die argitek van die heelal. Die doel van hierdie argitek was die vorming van 'n nuwe nasie onder die nasies van die wêreld. And Johan, when you consider the gravity of that statement, it does bring a sense of responsibility towards our stewardship of our identity, right? So we've got to tell our story. We've got to shake off the dust, and we've got to look the world straight in the eye and say, right, this is the country we built. This is the country we love. We are not going anywhere, and we will fight for it.
To help me to understand your message and your story today, you're going to have to first and foremost give me an idea of when were you born. The question should actually be, where were you when Nelson Mandela walked out of Pollsmoor prison?
I was born on the 4th of October 1990, and I think I was in the throne room there in heaven with God, and he said, Johannes, there's a great terrorist that's about to be released in South Africa, a very evil man. We need to send you here. We're going to send you down now. You're going to be born on the 4th, and you got to go fight the good fight.
When did you become aware of politics? When did you become aware of this thing called apartheid? And,
let's put it this way. I was raised in the traditional Afrikaner home, right? We grew up in a Calvinist church, and every dealing that we would have, with our family, with our friends, and with the community, people would uh, express their resentment often towards this change of government, but not with the confidence to publicly state it. Right? I think
Yeah, yeah,
the moment of overwhelmed many of them to the point where they didn't want to participate in the conversation. But to be a little bit more poignant, I did grow up in a house that was part of the HNP, the Herstigte Nasionale
yeah,
Party, under the
yeah,
leadership of Jaap Maree. So we grew up in my extended family. All of them voted no. Some of them were involved in the Bophuthatswana uprising. Not with the RVB, although just to clarify, I've got nothing against the RVB, and I'm not saying that to virtue signal in any way. But they were with the Boere Crisis Actie over there. So
okay,
they
okay,
they were ready. My extended family were very much dissatisfied
yeah,
with the fact that our country was handed over. But I don't feel like that was my come to politics moment, if I can use
yeah, yeah,
a statement such as that. I grew up, with this or carried over sentiments, but not with real understanding of
yeah,
the political landscape. So when I was about 16, I started doing. I was actually schooled privately. At home. I was schooled at home. Sorry, I
yeah,
apologize. Because my parents didn't want to put us into the communist, quote unquote, communist uh, curriculum.
hmm hmm
And
So I think let
therefore,
me just say this: it's fair to say that you come from a pretty much a conservative background. You come from parents
yes,
that said no in the referendum and was not very happy when 1994, when democracy came to South Africa.
absolutely. But I was schooled in English, right?
Hmm
So obviously, being schooled in English, my English tutor, she was a Scottish lady.
Yeah,
She obviously harbored a lot of resentment towards the English in her own capacity,
yeah,
obviously taught us a lot about the Anglo-Boer War and um, our history in a folkish sense, in a folkish sense. Not so much the apartheid struggle. But then when I was 17 and I went to a private school to go do my matric, I made the statement to my Afrikaans teacher one day that I am more fond of the English language than the Afrikaans language, because
yeah,
Afrikaans is a dwindling language, and etc. Loathsome as the statement may be, but that was at that time what I said and what I expressed. But she then read me a poem, and it was by MP van Wyk Lou. And the poem's name is Miskien sal ons ook sterwe. And when
hmm
she read me that poem, it absolutely, it sounds a little bit, maybe it sounds weird saying that something like that could make such a, could kickstart such a desire for knowledge and a fervor for politics. But
yeah,
really it was, it was this, it's about these two Anglo-Boer War Boer warriors that were laying in a trench,
yeah,
dying, and they were contemplating, is it really worth fighting? Why are we fighting? We are already, the battle is lost. And
yeah,
then the poem goes, maybe it is so that we will die one day, and that no sense would be found in our struggle and in our strife and in our suffering, and that people will not remember us or speak kindly of us. But we will at least have this knowing. We will know this thing, this lonely realization that our enemy could not bend us to their will, and that we could live high, only loyal to our blood. And when I heard that, I became my political awakening started, and from there it was one big journey up until 2015 when I met Pieter Groenewald which is quite a crazy story. I was at that time, and it is pretty funny. But I was in a missionary missionary home where I was about to go and evangelize blacks in Malawi.
Yeah.
That was where I was at that time, and then I met the mother of Dr. Pieter Groenewald, and we shared a lot of the same political understandings. And one day I went to his brother's farm, and wouldn't you know it, Pieter shows up and he invites me and says, we've got some things in common. Let's have a chat. And we were talking, and he asked me, "What are you studying?" And I told him, because I was in Potchefstroom, obviously. He then says, no, you're in completely the wrong direction. You must come, you must study political sciences. And I said, I want to study political sciences, but my dad would never fund something like that. He detests politics. And he then extends an invitation. And in 2016, in the middle, June, July, I went to Parliament. And Corné Mulder, Pieter Mulder, and Pieter Groenewald take me. I meet the three of them, and I was taken on a tour by Corné Mulder, and then also had a discussion with Pieter Groenewald, and they then extended an invitation. Nothing, how do you say, very official or very serious, that they would like to invest in young men like myself for the future, for leadership and stuff. And then at the conclusion of the day, I was standing in his office. I know this is a long-winded answer, but I do think it's relevant to the answer. He asked me, we were talking about, politics, me and Dr. Groenewald. And he was going on and on about, how his doctorate. And I was very unentertained by the subject matter, and no disrespect to the hard work that goes into, attaining something such as a doctorate, but it didn't feel relevant to what was burning in my heart. So I asked him, I said two things to him that really shaped my path forward. I told him, firstly, I said to him, Donald Trump is going to win the 2016 election. And he said to me, it's impossible. There is no way that Donald Trump will win the 2016.
Was that Dr. Groenewald who said no ways?
Yes, absolutely, yes. And I was shocked. I was taken aback. I was like, what? How does a career politician, lack the insight to deduce this? How can he, how is he so, and we had a lot of discussions. Obviously, I was telling him, that I know nobody. I do not know anybody that has voted since 1994. It was the last time that they voted, and the same go for myself. And him and Corné were just like, no, you have to understand how our government and constitution work. You absolutely have to go and register yourself to vote. And I say this to my shame. I did go and register myself to vote in that. I think it was a municipal election. I can't recall correctly or precisely, but God is gracious or good. I did not vote, and so I've kept my slate clean in that sense. But then the second thing I asked him, and this was perhaps for me the most telling of the whole conversation. I asked him, "What are you going to do to give the Afrikaner people back their freedom and their country that was stolen from them?" And I could see that. He's never really contemplated this question. He's never really thought about this. And the answer that he gave me was just really not. It didn't satisfy, and on any level,
Just help me out here, Johannes, for one moment. How old were you at the time?
26. I was at that time
26.
26.
Okay.
Yes. So I went back to Potchefstroom, and I
I
went
want you
back.
to elaborate now on this question you asked them. What are you going to do about the future of the Afrikaner? And you just said that they seemed a bit sort of surprised by the question. What did they say to you? You're 26 years old. This is in what year, more or less? 20. What are we talking about?
2016. So
2016.
it wasn't they. I asked
Yeah.
this to him privately in his office. This was only this discussion
Yeah.
took place between myself and Dr. Groenewald.
Yeah.
So it wasn't between the top three of the organization. This was just between me and him. And to be honest, I would lie if I tell you what his answer was. I was so unimpressed that I can't even remember. I can't recall exactly. He said something. The one thing that I can remember is, so are you familiar with the Siener van Rensburg prophecies? So Siener van Rensburg says that one day the four color, the vierkleur, will
be back.
Yeah, will be back.
Fly
and
again.
will fly again over a free, country, and the Boers will be in control again.
Yeah.
And I said that to him, and he said to me, "Well, who says it isn't the full color of the Freedom Front Plus?" And then I thought to myself, "Oh my God, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? These things are totally and wholly irreconcilable." But in any way, so I went back to Potchefstroom, and at that time, I went for an operation just in 2015, and I met this elderly Samayoer. What is that in English? I don't even know.
Sergeant Major.
Sergeant Major, and he told me he was very, you have to get into politics, Johannes. When are you going to get into politics? And at that time, I was still wholly convinced that I was going to become a missionary, not a politician. So after this meeting, I said to him, "No, I won't." I was just with Peter Groenewald and Corneille Mulder, and when I left his office, I had this realization that if I get involved with the Freedom Front Plus or conventional politics, I would not change them, but they would change me. And I would rather die than forego or give up on the ideal of South Africa ruled by the Afrikaner people. Well, that is why I said no.
We're going to have to go back a little bit to before all of this, because I would like to know at what point did you become politically conscious for the first time? What shaped you? Because you talk about a time you were 26 years old at that point, 2016 or whatever you said.
So you're talking.
I want to know what shaped your political ideas.
So what was more the lived experience of a post-apartheid young Afrikaner?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll tell you a bit about that. And
you can also tell me how did you view apartheid? Give me an idea of how did you understand apartheid?
So for me back then, it's us versus them. We are the apartheid guys. They are the enemy. They are
the
new
communists. Democratic South Africa you're talking about.
Oh yes, absolutely. So that was my understanding of it then, and it is my understanding is vastly different from it at this point in time. I think the bigger enemy was the Nationalist Party themselves, and actually your establishment Afrikaner liberal organizations like AfriForum, Solidariteit, the Freedom Front Plus. All of these people are what has brought us to this moment, and that then plays into the ingesteldheid, the political consciousness of the Afrikaner was not, it lacked behind what was required to maintain what we had. So if we wanted to maintain the status quo, if we wanted to remain an apartheid state, then we needed the Dr. Verwoerd or the Jaap Marais.
So what you're saying, Johannes, just help me to understand it. What you're saying is that the established political parties, the then National Party, the Conservative Party, the HNP, the now Freedom Front, all of these political parties basically what you're saying to me is sold us out. Would that be a fair interpretation?
I think it's worse than they sold it, and I don't say this to be like to make the situation, bigger or wow. But I do think that they were a way bigger threat than what the ANC, the agency of the ANC. It is laughable to think that they could really oppose us, but where they did beat us is by the intellectuals, the people that did their narrative war for them. And the reason why they beat us is because it was Jews. It was basically Jewish South Africans that led the anti-apartheid struggle intellectually,
Your views were and are then today, I would imagine, but at the time, as you became politically conscious, was that apartheid was a good system, we should maintain the system, that the Nationalist Party in South Africa basically sold us out, and you said you should can use a stronger language. Who was Nelson Mandela to you?
A terrorist and a murderer of my people. So, but today,
how did you come to that?
Views are
I'm trying to figure out, how did you come to this? How did you grow into a political ideology or belief that apartheid was a good thing, number one, and that Nelson Mandela is a bad terrorist? How did you come to shape those opinions?
Obviously, I grew up in a rural South Africa, so we were not unaware of liberal opinions, but the majority people that I brushed shoulder with and that I came into contact with did not support the 1994 takeover. And I grew up very in a certain sense conventionally, like the regular Afrikaner, in that we went to church on Sunday, we went to Sunday school, we were taught Calvinist Christian views, we were taught all of that stuff. But then I was homeschooled, and then when we would visit my grandparents, we would be in this English private school where there were blacks and Indians and coloreds and every Japanese and Chinese people. All of them were like this hodgepodge boiling pot kind of milieu, and I would get into trouble very oftenly for using racial slurs on the playground, for instance. I remember very clearly that I was about 9 years old or 8 years old, and the principal of the school called me in, and she said, "Johannes, we don't use that language anymore." And there was this little black boy that I had called the racial slur, and his parents. So I was standing there, and I was confronted by the principal. I was standing alone on my own, confronted by this principal. She was a woman. I forget her name. And she said, "We don't use this, and you're going to have to apologize. You can't call him, this word. It's unacceptable. We don't speak like that anymore." And I thought it to be very, very hypocritical. Why do we call them like this, and now all of a sudden we're not doing it anymore? What is the change of sentiments all of a sudden? You guys speak like this at home, but then when we are here in public, then all of a sudden we are not allowed to be who we are. So I say to her, I refuse. I will not. And I'm an 8-year-old kid, 9-year-old kid, in front of their parents, the kids' parents.
So you were. Let me help myself here in the process, because I'm fascinated by your story. How did you view, or did you contemplate, the aspirations of the majority of South Africans, 80% of the population?
Well, I didn't consider.
Were you not aware of it? Was it black people didn't figure in your life, and it was just not how did you imagine with their aspirations?
I didn't consider them to be South Africans, because I grew up in a white-only town. It was white people. So going to the Northern Transvaal, it was obviously a very, very big shock encounter, black people, and especially in the setting when I left the principal office. I was then this child had an older brother or a cousin or something, and then he assaulted me and he beat me bloody. I was a kid. He was 17, 16 years old, and he beat me bloody, threw me on the concrete and stuff. But I fought. I stood my man. I did not apologize, and I would never apologize for my views.
Yeah.
So, for me, it was a thing of it's our country. We have got a right to have a country, and it's more us or them kind of thing. I didn't have like this idea, these grand ideas of multiculturalism as opposed to nationalism.
Yeah.
I didn't understand politics on that level. It was only, really when I came into my 20s that I started when I became more politically activated, that I started delving into what do these things mean and where do we fit in all of this.
Yeah. I'm going to ask you a question at this point again, and this little chat that I'm having with you right now, it runs the risk of being one of the most honest discussions I've had in a long time. Let me say that in a very positive and friendly sense to you. I want to know, when you grew up as a kid, and it was us and them, and you grew up in a pure white environment, how did you view black people? You must have seen black people, had contact. You knew that there were all these other people. How did you view them? What were they to you?
Let me make a small correction there. I grew up in a white and colored area. So there were colored. And obviously, I think the first black I saw was obviously when we went and visited my grandparents in Northern Transvaal.
Okay.
How I viewed them, I don't know, are you ready for that kind of honesty?
I'm very sincerely interested in how you view. I can tell you right now how I viewed black people when I grew up as a young child. I'm very naked and honest about that. We as children were brought up to believe somehow by our environment, by our school, our church, our culture, whatever it case might be. There was this collective understanding, as I understand it, that black people were not quite ready for the civilized world as we defined the civilized world, that black people were less.
Yes, I absolutely viewed them as less in comparison to white people. Absolutely. I did as a kid have many mates. So because we were homeschooled, I apologize. Because we were homeschooled, we were a little bit ostracized in a certain sense. We weren't part of the NG Kerk. We left the NG Kerk, and that was like the cardinal sin at that point. So we then, I loved sports, but because we weren't in a school, I wasn't allowed to participate in sports at all. So I would go and round up all the little colleges, and teach them how to play cricket. And we would play cricket with them. I didn't want to play rugby with them because I didn't want to touch them. To tell you just exactly, that I am a hardline racist. Like it wasn't something like not was. I really still do consider myself to be one. Otherwise, I would not be true to myself. But I thought to myself, well, here's a happy compromise. I could play cricket with them, but.
So what you just said is that when you were a kid, it was okay to play cricket with the colored kids, but not rugby with the black kids, because playing cricket with the colored kids would mean that you don't have physical contact with them, no body contact. Yeah. But to avoid body contact with black people, you would not play. And you just said quite honestly and straightforward that you're I think you used the word hardcore. Maybe I'm putting words in your mouth now. A racist today.
Hard
are you still that today? Or are you? And I don't want to go into a whole discussion about this.
Yeah.
How you identify as, but just to be clear to me, do you still regard yourself today as a hardcore racist, and what would that mean?
I do still consider myself to be a racist, and a hardline one with that. It means that I view the world from a racial view. I believe in the separation of peoples, that we are not fundamentally the same, and that it is it is very arrogant. There's a very big hubris to want to say that we are all equal in my mind, and that we expect the same kind of things from different kind of people. For instance, I was brought up in a Calvinist home. God, there's one God, He created us all. But I wouldn't say that I necessarily believe that. I think that in order to be a people and to have an identity, we have to be able to have something to call our own. So I would like to think that I view the world as we've got a God. Our God is our God, and I am very opposed to the universalist kind of, Immanuel Kant's act only according to that maxim whereby you can at the same time will that it should become a universal law. I think it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous that we should think that way. I think we are different, and we should remain different. And what really destroys identity, is when we try and make people the same, because that is accompanied by an unnatural amount of force.
I want to talk to you about you are the leader of, if I'm right, or the founder of the Vryburger Beweging. I'm beginning to understand your political views or your view of the world. Just with regard to this racist thing that we're just talking about now, what is that based on?
It's based on the law of nature. You see, how we experience life, how we see things. It's like I very often hear people make the argument that racism is taught and it's not natural. Obviously racism is taught. We also have to teach our children what their names are. We have to teach them how to walk. We have to teach them how to talk. We have to teach them what they can eat, what they can't eat. Obviously, I think that racism is a very useful skill. So that you don't have to necessarily experience something before you can make an accurate deduction of how something could possibly play out. That doesn't mean, that whenever I see a black person, I think, I'm going to get robbed, or this is going to happen, or that's going to happen. But there are certain instances where I can deduce for myself. Listen, if I go to China, there's a good chance that I will be eating Chinese, and that I will be seeing Chinese people, and that I will be hearing Chinese spoken. So that's how I see the world.
Yeah. Just in terms of racism, again, the different races, is there also kind of, in your view of the world, then a pecking order as well?
Well, if you compare them, so if you compare a fish with a lion, then I suppose there is. A lion's always going to be better at hunting the savannah than what a shark is. A shark's going to die in the savannah, So we are different. We are different inherently.
How broadly do you represent a general view amongst whites in South Africa, or white Afrikaners? Or do you think that you are part of an extreme right-wing, white nationalist, white superior, whatever you want to call it, kind of identity?
Well, I don't like.
I mean, what I'm trying to say to you is are you an outlier? Are you a crazy right-wing guy?
Well, I certainly am not. I certainly
on
am
the
not
edges
crazy.
of society, or do people support your views?
I certainly am not crazy, and I certainly, am an outlier. But that doesn't pertain to my racial worldview alone. It comes to many philosophical world views as well. But I do think that what the views that I express is something that lives within all of us. And I'll tell you again another story. I lived and worked on a safari farm for the past 8 years. And one day, a bank manager comes to my farm, and he's a very liberal guy, and they're all having a this nice old conversation around the fire. And we're talking, and he says, it's just wonderful that Johannes managed to find a wife, that he managed to marry a woman. And I say, oh, how so? I think of myself to be a very, approachable person. I mean, nice guy. He says, yeah, but we all know your views. You're very extreme in your views. Everybody that knows you knows this. I say, yes, absolutely. But I'm just honest, I feel, about the way that I see the world. I think that which I express is something that a lot of people feel, but they don't necessarily have the courage to express it. And the courage to be honest with themselves about how they feel and how they view the world. They will have this. For instance, if I tell you, Johan, a taxi cut me off and I got very angry, nobody is going to imagine, no white person is going to imagine that taxi to be driven by a white guy. They're going to say, I know the driver of that taxi. I know exactly. So they'll say, like, racism is something that you need to. John Steenhuisen actually commented on me, and he said, some people are, how did he put it? He said, generational racists, and you're not gonna alter the way they will view the world. But I don't see it that way. I just think that we live in a very superficial world. Very there's very little honesty.
If you say we, you mean South Africans now? Is that
no people globally? If you go, listen, I've got friends. I've been to America. It's the only other country that I've been to, and I didn't go to go farm there. I actually went to Los Angeles, and I went to support a drummer guy from South Africa, and I met very, very liberal people there. And what I can see from people is that we really aren't. The society isn't very honest about. People aren't very honest about life, and a lot of people they don't confront things. They don't confront their own views. They sort of just go along to get along, and a lot of their views are just so that they aren't confronted and they don't get into trouble. Where that is what I feel, and I think everybody's probably got this desire to feel unique, but I think that I'm unique in the sense that I am no stranger to standing alone in the way that I express myself. So do I believe that I am some crazy person on a political outlier? No. This is a sentiment that a lot of Afrikaners and white people all over the world will have, but I don't think that they necessarily possess the willingness. I don't want to say that they're cowards, because that is quite a thing to accuse somebody of.
Yeah.
But I think that they don't necessarily possess that willingness to confront themselves about what they see and what they feel and think about the world.
Yeah. Would you challenge me then if I say to you that I've lived in Holland now for quite some time, I've lived in Amsterdam for quite some time, and my genuine objective observation is that different races in this city get along with one another, and that there is a kind of a color blindness. We have, for example, a lot of Surinamese people, black people, that live in Holland. And yes, they are dark-skinned, but they speak a perfectly fluent and even in most cases a better Dutch than the average Dutchman that was born here, but that they are enormously well integrated, and that color doesn't really matter here. And I really mean that from the bottom of my heart. I'm not trying to pretend something.
Yeah.
Do you think
so?
There's a falseness about that, or is this? I'm not saying that the situation in South Africa is well, it is pretty unique in a lot of ways, but I do and have experienced a multicultural society that functions very well.
Can what you're saying be true? Yes, it can be true. Do I think it is pretentious? I absolutely do think it is pretentious. And
Have you said pretentious? What do you mean with that? Okay, please tell me. Yeah.
So I was in Potchefstroom, obviously, and I went for some after hours class for, I don't know, mathematics or whatever, and the conversation came up of Nelson Mandela. And I heard this generic, indoctrinated Afrikaner in his mid-20s views expressed by this kid. He was like, "Oh, Mandela was a freedom fighter," and I said, "What do you know?" I lost my temper. What do you know about the guy? Do you know he killed physically our people? He bombed them. He wasn't this peaceful guy that you think. We can perhaps later get into a more analytical discussion about South Africa and the political landscape and, sort of how I see things playing out. But then the teacher sent me to meet, I think the guy's name was Thijs Dreyer. I speak under correction. He was the then second in charge of the language faculty of Potchefstroom faculty. And I spoke with him and we had this conversation because it was in 2015 and this was the Stalstraat, the Afrikaans must fall discussion was being heavily waged. And, I spoke with him and he said, I feel very moved by what you just said, Johannes. I'm going to introduce you to Vannie Carstens. He was then the head of the Taal faculty over there at Potchefstroom University. Yeah, Vannie Carstens, yeah. Professor Vannie Carstens, and I was sitting there in his this was just after the operation that I had. I was sitting there in his office, and he said, "Good morning, student. How can I help you?" I said, "Okay, so let's cut to the chase. South Africa, Afrikaans is under attack. Please tell me what you intend to do to as the head of the language faculty in the only Afrikaans university in the country at this point. What do you intend to do?" To thwart this attack, to defend Afrikaans. And he said to me, "You know what, Johannes, that's a great question. I like the question. I feel very passionately about it. It's nice to see young men, young students that are passionate about our language. But in order for Afrikaans to survive, it must be more inclusive. It must set its sights to broader horizons, and it must include foreign people into the Afrikaans family. We must get rid of the idea that Afrikaans is ours and that we should defend it." Now, I said to him then, Vannie, that's a ridiculous idea. How can you say something like that? I'm an unlearned, uneducated student, but I'm going to teach you as a professor something today, something that you may not have considered. But one would assume that you think before you speak, which is obviously not the case. And obviously this was a very heated kind of discussion, and I did give offense to Mr. Carstens. You can perhaps ask him if he remembers this incident if you know him well. But I said to him, one would suppose that you think before you speak, and that's why, Afrikaans could never, ever develop and grow as a language if we include everybody to it, because language is something that comes from the mind before it comes from the mouth. You think, and then based on what you have thought, you express it vocally. And therefore, language is a certain way of thinking. It is the mossie or the ostrich or the jackal. Everybody knows a jackal in the wilderness. When you go and you hear the jackal, you say, "Oh, did you hear that? It's a jackal." So the thoughts of the Afrikaner people are expressed in their language. It's what makes them unique, and therefore it is only them and it's only they that can contribute to the growing of this language and to the building thereof. That is why even inside our race, the Afrikaners will say 23, or the Germans will say 23, and English will say 23. It's obviously, between us and the English, there's a difference in thinking, even how we count, So how is this then? That
Afrikaans is core to you, the language is core to your identity, is what you're saying.
Yeah, core to your identity, absolutely. And then later on, I actually learned that this isn't a opinion that is held by myself alone. I think that it is. I think that people like Vannie Carstens and the current custodians of our language have abandoned, their stewardship, and they've moved to the status quo of the unoffensive politics. No, we will say what is okay to say, what is cool to say, and what is trendy to say, but we're not going to fight for something that with meaning. And if you think about what MP van Wyk Lou said about Afrikaans, he said language is much like a tree, that if it wishes to grow, it must shoot its roots deeper into the people that have created it, so that it could become a stronger tree. But if it grows horizontally, it is much more like weed and thistles. It is expansion, but not growth. It is damaging the source material. So if you can teach a Chinese person, or you can teach the Somali to speak Dutch, for instance, but if he speaks Dutch for 100 years, it will change into Somali, because it is a Somali that speaks it. So no, I do think that it is, and then somebody like Langenhoven.
I have to interrupt you because we're going to run out of time, and there's a lot of stuff that I want to talk to you about. I can tell you this. I'm an Afrikaner. I have been away from my language for at least 30 years and live here in Holland for at least the last 30 years, but I still speak the language of my heart, and nothing has interfered with my ability to speak Afrikaans or to express myself in Afrikaans. It is still the core, the most important part of my identity. The question in my mind that I'd like to ask you, and your discussion with Dr. Vannie Carstens, is why do you say Afrikaans is a threatened language?
Is a threatened language? Because it isn't being developed anymore. That which does not develop dies. We can see it. I was in the Afrikaner, perhaps this is the only class that I enjoyed in university, but I also didn't enjoy it because the professor was a gay guy and he hit on me, which I felt very, very,
You were not charmed by it?
No, I was not charmed by it. So he was teaching us in class. He was saying, oh, class, Afrikaans, this and that, and you've got to learn that you can't use words like hersen, heidiglik. Heidiglik is not an Afrikaans word, and he goes on to explain it. And I said, oh, well, you know what, professor, this worries me. I say, oh, well, professor, dit worry my verskriklik dat jy dit sê. And then he says, oh, so I see what you are doing there. I said, yes. And you should well see what I'm doing there, because worried is an accepted Afrikaans word, but all of a sudden, we don't write, we leave words such as hersenskim, and these words that used to be Afrikaans words are now all of a sudden left out of the Afrikaans dictionary because it's no longer part of the spoken language. And worry, which is a bloody English word, is now considered an Afrikaans word. Not to be offensive towards the English, but, worry is not by any stretch of the imagination an Afrikaans word. So why am I saying it's under threat? Because it's not being developed. Afrikaner identity is not being developed.
Johannes, but that's up to us as Afrikaners to look after. Yes. The question is more, is it under threat by the government? Is it under threat by the new system? Is it under threat by the democracy that we created in 1994? That's the real question. What we do ourselves with our language, well, that's another discussion.
Well, two things could be true at once, So, yes, there is obviously the nature of non-racialism is to create a more unified identity that moves away from that which separates people and that which makes them unique. I mean, just in the Afrikaner culture alone, we see things such as streekstal, dwindling. Jy hoor nie dikwels meer die Namakwalandse accent nie, maar you know what I mean? So you're not going to hear that all of a sudden. People are
but those are, let me interrupt you again here, because I'm really under time constraint, because otherwise we're going to really run out of time. Those are things that are sort of natural and part of the evolution of a language. we also have different dialects here in Holland, etc. And they also somehow in this age seem to be fusing more into standard Dutch or whatever the case might be. The discussion that I'm having with you is, and because of your political views, is Afrikaans in any way threatened by the system?
Yes, and I think Dutch is as well. Yeah, and I'll tell you why.
But let me rephrase that, then. Is Afrikaans in any way threatened by the African National Congress government, by the new democracy in South Africa?
Yes, because it's a multiracial, it's a non-racial. It will tell you it's a non-racial liberal democracy, and liberal democracy wants from the state to protect the value of the individual, and it wishes to separate us from a collective sense of identity. So yes, it absolutely. I mean, it expresses in its mission statement what it wants to do. It says, "I am against collective identity. I'm against collectivism." So yes, I think it's very logical, that it is under attack. But it's not. Identity is under attack wherever you go around the world. We live in this liberal world order, as they say.
Yeah, no, I get that. I mean, we're becoming all Americanized in the process, one could say, just in layman's terms now as well. I agree with you. I'm just trying to find out from you whether you believe that Afrikaans is in any way threatened by the Constitution, or threatened that there is an attempt to minimize Afrikaans, and that, of course, obviously we think about the Bella Law, etc., etc. That's really the central part of this discussion. What we do and how the language itself evolved, I think that's a different discussion.
But perhaps, Johan, the Bella Law is for me less of a threatening idea than the idea that we are ruled over by a foreign entity. The idea that the Afrikaners are a part of a multiracial South Africa is way more dangerous to Afrikaner identity than a Bella pill would be, and no matter what it entails. I constantly hear guys like Ernst Roots and Jaco Kleinhans, and they go on and on about the Bella pill and how dangerous it is, but it's way more dangerous to be a proponent of multiracialism.
Let's take this discussion more towards the Vryburger Beweging. Tell me, what is the Vryburger Beweging all about? The freedom, Vryburger, free citizen movement all about? Were you the founder of the movement, or tell me about it?
Okay, so me, Johannes Agenbach, of South Africa, of the Boer people of South Africa, declare to all our countrymen, racial kin around the world, and our enemies abroad and domestically, that South Africa belongs to the white man, is ordained by God Almighty, creator of heaven and earth, and we will safeguard it with our lives. We will fight and we will die for our right to once again have our own country in which we will live free and prosperous.
I am not the leader of it. I'm currently a spokesperson for it, but I am due to physical, my health or whatever, I am in a bit of a political hiatus. I am not very active. I'm focusing on different things right now. But the Vryburger movement essentially is a moving away, is a movement that we started to wage a narrative war, cultural war, so to speak, within the Afrikaner people. Afrikaners have fell prey to reactionary politics, where if you go from AfriForum to Suidlanders to, you can take all of them, and it's just the same thing with a different name. There is no revolutionary spirit or any desire to be proactive or to reignite the national spirit within the Afrikaner people at all. Their focus is on patriotism, but devoid of nationalism. So patriotism has as a prerequisite nationalism. You have to be a nation, part of a nation, to be part of to protect a certain border.
What is the core mission of the Vryburger Beweging? I somehow get the impression you talk about the restoration of the Afrikaner cultural identity.
Yes,
So
and our fatherland.
that's part of the mission.
So
And you talk about an own space for the Afrikaner. Is the dream at the end of the day also a geographical space, a la 235, Article 235 or whatever, for the Afrikaner? What are we talking about here?
The proponents of Article 235 in any sane society would be, and in any sane society would be tried for treason and possibly receive a judgment of capital punishment. If we're going to be honest, the dream is the restoration of the borders that we had in 1961. South Africa is our country. It is ridiculous to
What do you mean
pretend
the
that
borders
it
of
isn't.
1961? Yeah, Johannes, help me out here. When we became a republic, that's what we're talking about.
Yes, when we became a republic, yes, which would include
So,
Namibia.
and how have those
and
borders been infringed in the meantime?
yes, yeah. Obviously, we would have to have a reinstitution of what the borders looked like then. But
What does that mean?
I
Just help me out there. I don't quite understand that. Are you talking about the
that
borders within the country itself? Are you talking about the
we're
different?
talking about Zuidwest Africa becoming part of South
Okay.
Africa, and South Africa becoming what it was in 1961, as it was internationally recognized by all states. And there's a spiritual significance to this in the world. South Africa the world is looking at us, right? The world's looking at us. I'm not talking about the politicians, like, for instance, Donald Trump. Donald Trump was elected into office to represent the American people, but the only thing he represents is Israel, and the only thing he fights for is Israel. That's why we've got now a war, because Netanyahu decided, Iran is evil or something. It's important, because right now you've got the Netherlands, you've got Sweden, you've got all of these countries, you've got France. It's being overrun by people that are not French. And just because you speak French, it does not make you French. What makes you French is having the French genetics. That is what makes you French. I mean, we're not going to start calling a French poodle a Rottweiler just because it lives with a pack of Rottweilers and is under the impression that. I mean, we are all amused when we see, for instance, a pet meerkat. You all know, like a meerkat. What's that in English? So when a pet meerkat sort of lives with different animals in a household setting, and it's sort of fancies itself, a dog or whatever. We think it's funny, we make fun of it and says, this little meerkat is it likes to think that. Sorry?
He's got an identity problem.
He's got an identity problem. Now, white people have got an identity problem. So the Vryburger movement are a white nationalist movement that wishes to fight that narrative war, to say to white people, hey, regardless of this liberal democratic system globally that is telling you've got no right to say that you are white, and that being white and being German makes you, distinct from other groups. You have the right to be proud of that. You have the right to celebrate that. You have the right to a fatherland of your own, And actually,
but you must now forgive me now. But now it's beginning to sound a bit crazy to me, because I mean, that there are not only white Afrikaners that live in South Africa, that are inhabitants of the land.
What do you mean? What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, the country is populated with 80% black people.
Okay.
Remember, 7% white people.
Yes.
So I mean, you're not saying to me that you claim that white South Africans, and then per definition Afrikaners, have a right to this huge, massive piece of land, inclusive of Namibia? I mean, that
I have to ask you the question, Johan. When 1961, was this an accepted fact that South Africa belonged to the Afrikaner people?
It was accepted by the Afrikaner.
No, it was
not accepted by the international community.
It was internationally recognized. You can go and research that yourself.
Yeah. But I mean, what I'm saying, Johannes, is that you might be right. I'm not so sharp on the historic development now, but just factually, whether it was internationally recognized or not, whether the apartheid government was recognized internationally or not, the fact is still that you have 80% black people living in the country, which you can't just simply push out of the borders of South Africa. So,
what is the percentage of English people that live in London today?
I don't know. I really can't give you the answer to that.
So the English,
I know what it's about, but I don't have statistics in front of me.
You can go and look at the specifics of it. But the English are now a minority in London, the city.
Yeah, no, I understand the phenomenon that you're talking about. The Dutch are
we going to make the argument?
Let me just say this: the Dutch citizens are minority now in Rotterdam, and I think here in Amsterdam we're risking becoming the Dutch. I'm not saying we. I'm a South African. Risk becoming a minority in Amsterdam as well. I just don't understand how does that refer back to our situation in South Africa as it is today in the year 2026. My understanding is that there are a population of, say, 65 million people in South Africa, of which 7% of those are white people. You don't tell me that those 7% white people have got a greater claim on the country.
Oh, yes, I do say that, and I'll tell you why. I can quantify that. Okay, so we had the Anglo-Boer Wars, and we had the wars with the blacks. So the borders of South Africa were drawn by blood. Let's not be pretentious about this. We fought for every inch of this land.
Yeah.
You know, we bargained for it, I suppose. A lot of people say that, but I tend to err on the side that we paid for this country with blood. We drove out blacks from certain areas and made it our own. We conquered it. Conquest is a very it's a legitimate form of, you know, attaining property or whatever. So then the Anglo-Boer War came, and it was instigated by the Rand Lord merchants, which was this Jewish group in South Africa that wanted the mineral wealth of South Africa, and they sicked the English on us, and we lost our freedoms. You know, we lost the Transvaal Republic, Vrystaat, the Natal, all of that, and then in 1910, I believe, Lord Alfred Milner started the Union of South Africa. And then him and Jan Smuts, they forced the Afrikaners to accept. It was something like 100,000 black mine workers that came to South Africa, and then came citizens. They abolished all of the borders that there were prior to 1910 and made it this unified country, you know. And then said everybody is a South African with, you know, not the same rights at that point, but everybody is now South African and that lives in this demographic area. So the 80 million blacks that there now are in South Africa is as a result of the fact that we lost our country again in 1994. So you see, this is the first time that the borders were abolished in South Africa, and then people started moving. You know.
Okay, I kind of hear what you say. I'm going to interrupt once again because of time restraint. I want to also at the same time, while we're talking, I want to play for our viewers more visual material that you're producing, and I was fascinated. In fact, I shared that with a girlfriend of mine tonight. A video of the Vryburger Beweging's fakkelmars.
Yes.
Torch March. I sent it to a girlfriend of mine, and she said, "My goodness, it looks like a bunch of fascists." But I want to play that while we're talking.
Absolutely. I mean, absolutely. I take no issue
with your permission again, Johannes, because it was fascinating. But let me take it just the next opposite towards what you just said now. Whether your facts are correct historically or not.
Yes.
At the end of the day, the fact is that as we are right now in 2026, we've got a certain composition. Through migration patterns or whatever the case might be, we've got in this country today, as it is, conclusively roughly 65 million people. I'm sure that my figures are slightly out, but a composition of only... Nothing can change that reality.
Oh no, that's not right.
So what I'm saying is, even if you're right, even I know there are people saying give back the Boer republics, and there are people that are saying, well, a homeland here, or maybe Oranje as the start of a. I'm just saying in just very realistic, honest terms with one another now. Just simply, what do you do with the facts that you do have? I mean, you can't ethnically
Is
cleanse 80%
well,
of the South
you don't
African
have to.
population for the sake of a crazy scheme.
It's not crazy. We've got the right to our fatherland. It's like, let's say for instance you are the owner of a home, and I come to your home, I bring my family there, I come and visit for the weekend, and I decide, I like Johan's home, it's nicer than mine, I'm going to stay here. And then I'm going to say, Johan, you need to get out. There are more of my family than there are of yours. It's no longer your property. You're not going to stand for that. So if individual rights must be protected, if we've got the right to private property, then certainly we have got the right to collective property. And South Africa is ours by merit of blood and conquest by collective property. Now, yes, I'm not going to intimidate people by the solution for South Africa now. For the Afrikaner people, this was a gradual decline. And it was not brought about by the ANC or Nelson Mandela. I think Nelson Mandela is a very big traitor to his people. The black people had a very big leader in Chris Hani. Chris Hani was, by all metrics, a better man than a Nelson Mandela, and somebody that you can respect. Nelson Mandela was a coward, and he was a yes man. So it really doesn't behoove us to now and say to Afrikaner, listen, we are going to ethnically cleanse black people. Nobody is saying that. We are saying that we have got to have the courage to first and foremostly acknowledge that we are a people unto ourselves, and that we do not want minority groups within rights within a group, but we are a group and a folk unto ourselves, and that we must acknowledge that first and deepen ourselves within that knowledge, and then we can start moving from there. It is not, white people are willing to die for this country. I do not know many black people that will be willing to die for this country.
Yeah, my question, Johannes, is again, nobody stops you in terms of the South African Constitution to live out your identity, to be exactly who you are, to be the Afrikaner that you want to be. Nobody is
it does, because we do not have no, that's not true, because we do not have sovereignty. In order for us to be Afrikaners, we have to have sovereignty, which means we have to have institutional power. Now, the reason why we don't have institutional power is exactly because verwoord. So right now, there's this very treacherous movement in South Africa. It's called the 235 movement. And it is based off a model of federalism. It's based off the idea that somehow all of these different groups in South Africa are going to autonomously govern themselves, which is nonsense. Let me tell you, that's politicians telling you that, right? And they are lying. They are lying to the people. They are going to say, you're going to get the right to self-determination as Afrikaners, but they're going to include Kleerlinge. They're going to include coloreds into that, So they want a federalist state, and it's not a new idea. This is something that you can get yourself this little book. It's called Die Goeie Hoopplan vir Suid-Afrika.
Put it on the screen again. Can you just put it on the screen again so we can have a good look at it, the cover?
It's Die Goeie Hoopplan vir Suid-Afrika. I got this book and it was a little bit torn up, so I had to fix it in a way. Now, in this book, they've got this little map. And this was already in now why this is relevant is, sorry, I have to get this. This was already in 1981 that this was discussed. On the 12th of November, 1981. So on the 12th of November, 1981, they already had a discussion speaking about the balkanization of South Africa into 8 different provinces. So then they brought in the Afrikaner, the ANC, to sabotage the state sector, which is why whenever Jaco Kleinhans or Ernst van Zyl, Ernst Roots, Corneille Mulder, Rob Hass, any of these guys get the opportunity to speak, they will say, oh no, Johan, we need to. I'm now Rob Ashoff. We need to focus on the private sector economy. That's what we need to do. We need to focus on private sector governance. And you know what? We also need, Johan, is we need a free market capitalist system. And people don't understand, right? So it's like whenever somebody tells you, I'm a paleo-libertarian. My God, Johan, how many people know what a paleo-libertarian is? The layman is not, his political understanding isn't that. The layman's political understanding is, I am an Afrikaner, and I love my God, and I love my country, and I love rugby, unfortunately, as unfortunate as that is. but that is the stereotypes. I love rugby, and I love brandy. And they find their identity in these kind of things, which is it is something that we need to change, right? And it can be changed. It certainly can. But these people will tell you that people like Rob Ashoff, he will give the idea that it's a good thing if we've got a free market capitalist system. But the free market capitalist system means that a billionaire from America can all of a sudden now have property in South Africa. So it's ridiculous that the Afrikaners have a claim to South Africa, but it's not ridiculous that a Jewish billionaire can own 9% of our entire country. Is economical wealth, and which is why all of these people that I just mentioned, they will parrot what they say because they are henchmen. They are the henchmen, the political henchmen of these people. They do not care for Afrikaner identity, which is why they always speak about economy first. The average Afrikaner is excluded on an economic basis. Why would we fight for the economy if the economy excludes us? I mean, let's look at Johan Rupert, billionaire. Nathan Kirsch, billionaire. Rob Ashoff, billionaire. Rupert, not Anton Rupert, he's the father of Johan. Sorry, Nicky Oppenheimer, billionaire. What's those group that housed Mandela after he was released? It's also this billionaire Jewish family. Neil Risek, billionaire. All of these people are Jews. They are billionaires, and they've got a claim to South Africa. They own, without people knowing it, more of South Africa, which is also like, I think it was Floyd Shibambu that said about Julius Malema, which is also another loathsome character, and I like him I dislike him for different reasons than perhaps the average Afrikaner. I like him because he's a yes man and a coward. Julius Malema is a reactionary. And the only reason why he says, kill the Boer, kill the farmer, is because that's what lives, that's the popular sentiment that lives in a lot of black people, because they feel disenfranchised. They were denied the democratic revolution that was promised to them under, what's his name, Chris Hani. And now you've got Julius Malema, and Floyd Shibambu said to him, you go on about how bad white people are, and then you go and drink brandy with Johan Rupert at night. So how do you square that circle, man? So the political landscape is very dishonest in South Africa.
Let's just bring it back to this ideal that you have. Relive the place or the space of the Afrikaner within the South Africa as we know it. I don't quite understand how
it's
you
possible.
could realistically ever possibly well, yes, I mean, because there is you cannot undo history, you cannot undo demographics. And in fact, I watched a program not too long ago with Professor Jeffrey Sachs, where he's talking about the demographic explosion in Africa and in sub-Saharan Africa, and in particular in South Africa as well. And if you go and look at the numbers, it's extraordinary. The white man is dwindling in South Africa. The Afrikaner is dwindling in South Africa. We're becoming a smaller and smaller group. And
that's a very interesting point you bring up, Johan, and I apologize.
I'm just trying to say that this is the reality, that whether you like it or not, you know.
Absolutely, it's the reality. I'm not debating that. I'm not debating that. It's absolutely the reality. But I'll put something into perspective for you. Globally, white people are we went from, in the last 100 years, from 33% roughly to 7% roughly of the world population. So South Africa is a perfect glimpse.
You talk about whites then, white people, the white race,
white
whatever
people.
you want to call it. Okay.
Yeah,
Really?
white people. White people globally have gone from 30% to roughly 7% in the world. So that puts us at the same odds globally as it does in South Africa nationally. Now, when you say demographics can't be undone, that's not true. It's been done many times over in the world's history. The movement of people.
What do you mean when you say that?
That, for instance, the Carthaginians were white, but you go to Carthage, to modern day Carthage, and you're not going to really see a white person there. Also, the ancient Egyptians were white, but you go to Egypt today, and you're not going to see white people there. So, demographics, or let's say demographics can change, and South Africa can. Hell, the African continent, for all we know, can become an all-white continent. It's not impossible. I think the biggest cancer, the biggest danger to the white mind and the white psyche is conservatism. And conservatism is this ridiculous idea of the politics of the obtainable. No great man has ever set his sights on the politics of the obtainable. When people heard of Otto von Bismarck and he set out to unify 39 German states into one, do you think that was plausible? Do you think that was realistic? No. When Alexander the Great vaulted over a city wall by himself, man alone, and fought for a couple of minutes against a city by himself, was it possible? No, his entire military council that knew him said to him, Alexander, are you crazy? You can never do it. It cannot be done. So I don't think we should concern ourselves with what is reasonable and what is plausible and what is achievable. I think that we should move ourselves to find a conviction for truth and a willingness to propagate that truth and to speak it. And then I think we will be respected by the nations of the world again, because right now, white people are not respected. They are disrespected, and rightfully so, because their behavior is bad.
I get what you're saying. There's a lot to be discussed here. I took note of the fact the other day, talking about demographics, that I think black women are having 4 times more babies than white women, something like that. I put it in a very coarse way now, perhaps. I had just for fun, my little discussion with artificial intelligence, asking questions about exactly the continuation of the white man and his role in South Africa. And if you look at the predictions for the demographic development of South Africa, it looks very dim. It looks like, I said this the other day, jest and fun, just that in 100 years' time or 200 years' time, we might only have left what I called then that shining city on the hill, which would be Oranje, as a kind of a museum for.
That is exactly. You know what, Johan?
Am I just being nasty now, or
no? I think that describing Oranje as a museum is exactly correct. That's what I hope to change in my people's minds. You hear a spokesperson of the Oranje movement like Joost Strydom. He goes to the young Republicans over there in America, and they say, Joost, can we pray for you? And he's, yeah, you can pray for me. But he says he's taken aback by the request, which is also, again, bloody pretentious. But anyway, so he says, I'm so taken aback, they asked me to pray for them, to pray for me. And they said, what should we pray, Joost? What prayer can we give the Afrikaner people? And he's like, no, we must ask God to protect us. What a ridiculous thing to ask God. God, please protect me. Are we now driving from Cape Town to Franschhoek? No, please, God, protect us. We're driving here with our family. No, we are a people. We should be asking God for conviction and for the strength of conviction and for willpower and for things like that, And that's what's wrong with the Afrikaner, is he's a conservative. The Afrikaner should, I like the liberals more, or envy the liberals. No, I don't like liberals. I detest liberals, but I envy them more for their further that they've got. They've got further. They want to fight. You read Karel Niehaus's statement after when he was tried, right? And he says, they say, would you kill P.W. Botha? He says, yes, obviously. He's the illegitimate ruler of this country. And then you're never going to hear an Afrikaner say something like that. They're going to say, no, God, please protect us, God. Why? Why? You know, imagine how disappointed God is when he hears that prayer request, protect me. No, man, find some courage, you know, find some courage as Afrikaner. Have some boldness again.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed this so far. And I'm going to even say that I'll invite you back to enlighten me more on some of your ideas in the future, Johannes, but we have to close this down. I am not sure if you're a married man yet. I think you said you're a married man. If you have children yet, I don't know, but whichever way, do you see your kids growing up and be happy? Is there a happy future for them in South Africa?
This is perhaps also a very telling thing. I was 27. I was in the Suidland. I went from the Freedom Front Plus to the Vryburger Beweging. And I was so afraid, Johan. I was so afraid of everything. Oh, you know, the world's going to end. You know, God's going to come on the clouds and there's going to be this big calamity. And, oh, you know, the blacks are all going to kill us because it's going to be this revolution. I'm not going to have children because there's going to be a war. Blah, blah, blah. You know, all of this very common thinking among the Afrikaner conservatives. That's why I loathe it so, because I know what effect it had on me and myself as a person. But when I was 29, you know, I became, I would say, a national socialist. And that very, very, very much changed my way of thinking. I am now a man. I married my wife. I met her, and 3 days later, I asked her to marry me. 3 months later, we were married. We've been married now for 7 years. We have 4 children, 4 boys. You know, I love them with every fiber of my being, and I will do everything in my power to ensure that, you know, I don't say that. I think the pursuit of happiness is much like this. This other thing that you mentioned earlier. It's like people want to pursue happiness. I don't think you should pursue happiness, Johan. I think we should pursue purpose in life. And it is when we discover purpose in life that we will be happy. You know, so rather I would teach them not to pursue happiness, but to pursue purpose. And God willing, that will make them happy. You know.
Johannes, it's really been riveting talking to you and listening to you. I told you at the beginning of the program that I invited you because I saw some of your clips and I thought they were really not only professionally well done, but there was something quite sort of almost poetic about how you do this and presenting, and in all of that, your call for getting back to understanding who you are. You made a clip also, I took note of it, remember who you are.
Yes.
So I'm going to say thank you for talking to me, and I'm going to play out this program with your permission, if I'm permitted to do so, with this clip produced by yourself entitled Remember You Are. And with that, Johannes Agenbach from the Vryburger Beweging, thank you very much for this discussion.
Thank you, Johan. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And let's take a look at this really quite beautiful clip called Remember Who You Are. Thank you so much.
Paar dae maaldae gedagtes deur my kop onophoudelik. En wat ek opgetel het is dat ons volk het in 'n kerker verval van wanhoop. En diegene wat teen ons vryheid werk, wil ons die hele tyd daar hoor. Dit is nou al so ver gevorder dat dit 'n punt bereik het waar hulle deel in ons onderdrukking deur goed te sê soos kyk na jou volk, dis wie hulle geword het. Dan verwys hulle na hoe ons volk se moreel verval het, hoe ons verval het in
verlopenheid, drankmisbruik, gebroke verhoudings, geskeide, hier opgebreekte huwelike, wanhoopigheid, die feit dat mense alles vat en oor see gaan. Hulle sê vir ons het ons land teruggegee. Hulle sê vir ons is lafhartig. Hulle sê vir ons is slapgat, ons kan nie terugbeklei nie. Maar weet jy wat, dis net soos die Satan, bring beskuldigings teen ons, en hulle bring nie die beskuldigings teen ons omdat dit so is nie, maar hulle bring die beskuldigings teen ons omdat dit is wat hulle wil hê vir ons. Dit is wat hulle van ons wil hê, maar dit is tyd dat ons onthou, wie is ons? Wie is die wit man in Suid-Afrika, 'n wolraad woltemade, wat sy eie lewe neergelê het, om mense wat verdrink het te gaan red, 'n Raagie de Beer, wat haar lewe opgeoffer het, vir haar boetie, wat gesterf het, wat sou sterf as sy dit nie doen, 'n Paul Kreer, met die moed van 'n leeu, 'n Joopie Fourie, met die eerlyd en die opregtheid van 'n duif, 'n Dani Malan, met die rigting vasheid van 'n wawiel. Dit is wie jy is, Witman. 'n Hendrik Vermoed met die statigheid van 'n ware staatsman. Dis wie jy is, dis wie jou volk is, en dis wie ons wees sal wees. Hulle steel hierdie hoop van ons volk, want hulle wil hê ons moet in die kerker van wanhoop verval. En wie is ons anders as 'n volk geroep tot afsondering, witmanskap, 'n heilige volk tot God se eer? Dis wie jy is. 'n geseënde volk. Diegene wat sê dit is nie so nie, sê dit, want hulle wil jou misbruik. Hulle wil jou gebruik in jou wanhoop, maar ek sê vir jou, wit man, staan op. Dit is tyd om op te staan en terug te vat wat aan jou behoort. Jou eer, jou identiteit, jou waardigheid. Moenie laat hulle jou oortuig van jou skande nie, maar oortuig jouself van jou toekoms.